JacquiLewis uses her gifts as author, activist, preacher, and public theologian to create an anti-racist, just, and fully welcoming society in which everyone has enough. She is the Senior Minister for Public Theology and Transformation at Middle Collegiate Church in New York City, and she's the author of Fierce Love, a bold path to ferocious courage and rule-breaking kindness that can heal the world.
Hi there, my name is Cameron Trimble. I'm the CEO of Convergence, and I am joined today with JacquiLewis, who is friend, colleague. Jackie, you and I have had a long time of wonderful experiences together, often creating mischief together. So I'm really grateful that we get to have this conversation. Tell everyone what you're up to. We'll talk about middle collegiate. You've just published a book, you're doing podcasts, it's all kinds of stuff. So tell us about life right now.
Well, right now, you and I are also sharing our allergic response to pollen.
Yes,
as
we
it
are.
pops out in the world and says, I don't care if it's cold, we're springing, the buds are budding and the pollen is pollinating. So you must be allergic and have difficulty breathing.
Yes.
So we have that in common. You know, things have been really, honestly, Cameron, it's been a pretty wild ride since the last time you and I really had a chance to talk. Middle Collegiate Church burned down in December of 2020, and all of us shut down in March of 2020. So we've had to do ministry in whole new ways, bold new ways that have been both, awe-inspiring and also challenging. And it's been both hectic and momentous and sad and traumatic and wonderful and amazing to watch our community prove what resilience is in these times, Cameron.
Yep.
I'll just dive back to March 2020 for a second, where we had planned a big convening, a big conference, Revolutionary Love Conference number, 14, down in Washington, D.C. to take advantage of the election. And boy, COVID said, nope, that's not what's happening. Hotels are shut down, conference centers are shut down. You shall be digital. And we did. And we, you work really closely with Jim Keat, and you know how good our digital people can be with making adjustments. So we adjusted and found that actually our conference, maybe like yours as well, works excellently in digital spaces. And that was a big shot in the arm.
Yep.
In that same time frame where George Floyd was murdered, and Breonna Taylor's death, and Ahmaud Arbery's death, we found ourselves, Cameron, really digging into one of our skill sets, which is about building multiracial, multi-ethnic communities and creating some trainings in a digital space. And that opened up new doors for us, where communities found us in California, and, West Coast actor types, and like, can we learn? And so we found ourselves having a new kind of congregation in the midst of all of that. And then the fire happened in December of 2020. And I'm linking these things together because I've been thinking about the things I found in the fires, right? The fires of COVID, the fires of kind of unbelievable racial, ethnic upheaval around Black folks and brown folks and Asian folks, and the literal fire that took our sanctuary just hone out new capacities and new ways to be church. And some 620 people have joined us since March of 2020, have joined the church. That's crazy town, a lot of growth. And that's also, yeah, what do we do with that? So I've been up to pastoring people during COVID, holding them as they grieve, watching the world on fire along with you and all of our colleagues, trying to make meaning and make sense of it, creating new modalities, I would say, maybe of ministry, and trying to figure out where Middle will have a physical site in these next few months. We hope we'll know.
So
That's my
let's,
world.
it's a lot of a world. I can understand why it has felt like a lot. And then you've also, in that time period, right, you published Fierce Love.
I did, just because why wouldn't I do that too, Cameron?
Right. Why wouldn't you write a book on top of everything else? And how has that experience been for you? Because it's such a powerful book, and I've read it now 3 times, I think.
Wow.
And most recently, because I wanted to make sure that we were able to talk about this, and it was fresh for me. And I was struck. I mean, I always am when I'm with you, of how you're so willing to tell the truth about yourself in a way that grants permission for the rest of us to do the same.
Hmm.
And that there's something so healing about that. And then in the third reading of Fierce Love, what I realized is that you so beautifully and so brilliantly actually help us see that's the way to an authentic encounter with the sacred, right? So it's in that vulnerability, that honesty, that willingness to show up in our realness, that's actually where we find most powerfully our creator. You wove that into the structure of the book, which I thought was amazing.
I think that's true, and I'm grateful. I'm sorry, Zoom cues sometimes, like if someone finished, I didn't mean to jump in on the end of your words there, love.
No, please.
I think it's true that I found that like we sold that book. My agent Todd Schuster and I sold that book to Penguin Random House around Juneteenth, 2019. It was this really interesting time where my friends, many of my friends that are Black artists or Black writers or teachers, or, we felt like the universe was beginning to open up new kinds of doors to Black talent. And sure enough, we sold this book, and it was due. It was due the week before the fire, and clearly we pushed back the due date to February. But then the fire had a chance to be a character in the book,
Yep.
And I'm wanting to say, Cameron, that in a way, the book wrote me too. Like I thought these thoughts and felt these feelings about what is fierce about love, what is revolutionary about love. And then you can be having a life that says, oh, actually, this isn't theoretical. This is very real and very practical. This disarming truth that needs to be told to yourself about yourself, so you can be your best self, so you can love yourself. And the way that calls us into authentic truth telling with our communities, with our posse, our people, and in the world, why not? Like, what do we have? We have everything to lose.
Yes.
We can't have a powerfully candid, authentic, naked relationship with the holy. I don't know that I would be well right now if I didn't practice what I preached.
Mm-hmm. I want to go in 2 different directions, so let's we'll just see. But I want to make sure that people listening to this conversation also know about the podcasts that you're working in partnership with CAC, Center for Action and Contemplation, who's a wonderful partner to a lot of us. And you've got that podcast, and you've just launched another one. Could you take a second? Because I think it's so important that people can connect to your voice in all of the places you're putting it.
Thank you so much for that. We the Love Period podcast that is produced by Corey Pig at CAC for us, certainly an outgrowth of Middle's theology, Cameron, my theology that is Middle's theology, that, what is it that God requires of us? Love God, love neighbor, love self, love period. Everything else is commentary. Just trying to get to a simpler, more profound truth about what it means to be faithful across our religions, right? Across our ethical commitments, across race and difference and divisiveness. And it's been really a joy to do it. We're going into season 3. We did 2 seasons. The first one sort of focused on personalities like Brian McLaren and Barbara Brown Taylor, Ruby Sales, people we know and love. The second season, we did the book. So I'm glad you made that connection. We did chapters of the book with folks like Wajahat Ali and Michael Way Matthews, Lisa Sharon Harper, Valerie Kaur. So interfaith, cast of characters. And then we did a little Black History Month season, and now we're looking at season 4 and trying to really talk about fierce love and faith in politics on the way into the midterm. So I love that. I love the chance to have these conversations like you and I do too. And then just now we launched a podcast called The Four, a fearsome, faithsome foursome talking Black love, Black joy, Black resilience. Lisa Sharon Harper, Otis Moss III, Michael Way Matthews, and I are all Auburn senior fellows, and we just found our way to the ways we are the same and different. We thought that would be interesting and energetic, and it is. We've got some great guests there. So check that out wherever you get your podcast, The Four. Look for the Black people. There's another 4 that's not the Black people, but that's okay. There's 4 other folks.
Follow the Black people. That should be the motto, actually. Just follow the Black people.
Follow the Black people. And
I
then,
love it.
And then Love Period is wherever you find your podcast as well. So,
Yes.
I'm trying to put theology in the public square. I was so glad to have a chance to write a book, to write a trade book, right? We had written churchy books before, but to get this book in the public square, in the mainstream, to talk about love has been a great honor and a great joy.
Good. So the topic of the summit is the future of spirituality. And as you were just naming, that there's something essential about this fierce love that frames what I'm sensing from you as sort of a foundation for whatever spirituality exists in the future. That's going to be key. But when I asked the question, Jackie, what do you think is the future of spirituality? What comes to mind for you?
Yeah, I'm so grateful to be able to chat with you about that, Cameron. I think, you said I can go 2 ways with your questions. I think we have 2 ways to go with this spiritual journey toward the future. One is, I think a lot of what we have done in the past in terms of church, I'm an expert on church, not synagogue, mosque, but I think maybe there as well, has not led us to the promised land we've dreamed about, or led us to shalom or to kunalam. That there has been a way in which religion has been hijacked to perpetuate worldviews that are not celebrative of all folks or the flourishing of all the folks. So, my book, I'm calling us to remember the foundations of what we would call the world's major religions, that almost all of them are anchored in love of neighbor as self. The Quran says, don't withhold from anyone that which you want for yourself. Of course, Jesus' scriptures say you shall love the stranger because you were once strangers in a strange land, and one time love your neighbor as yourself, and that's the one Rabbi Jesus preaches to us when he's asked, what's the most important commandment? How do you do this thing well? Love God with heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. And I think, Cameron, I would say as a Christian chick growing up in the world, nobody really focused on love me. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love God. Love your neighbor as yourself. So I'm pretty much thinking that the spirituality of the future has to acknowledge the both and of this love dynamic. I'm going to say love God, love the holy, love the universe, love the world, love the love that hires power, however we name it, y'all who are listening, do that. That's great to have that be a primary love object that fuels your life and feeds your soul, but that enables you loving your neighbor as you love you. And so future spirituality is going to have to think about love self, Cameron. I betcha part of what ails us is we are loving our neighbors as we love ourselves. And
Yes.
since we don't love ourselves, we are loving our neighbors in a wholly unacceptable way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking about a kind of recovery of, a resuscitation of, maybe a rebranding of the self-care, the self-love, the power in knowing ourselves fully and embracing ourselves honestly and fully, actually as a sacrament, Cameron, a symbol of how much we love God. I think that's got to be in the future for us.
I'm thinking about, in the most practical terms, what would it mean to love ourselves and find our way back? But I wonder if the starting place is in that telling the truth about who we are, and then forgiving ourselves and loving ourselves, with clear eyes, clear seeing.
Yeah, I think that's right. One of my favorite rabbis says, an ethical life is learning how to see. And I think even in that comment, most of us would think, oh, by ethics, we mean our outward posture toward the world. And yes, but also, isn't it ethical for me to lubricate my soul and to hydrate my body and to, care for my mental state and honor my unique particularities, my sexual orientation, my gender representation, my passions, fears, joys, hurts, my ethnicity, my skin tone, my hair, which this one just wants to fight and stand out for you and Jim today. This is what it is. And this is what is made it in the image of divine. This is what's, a temple for love. This right here is what it is. Clearly, looking at it for what is to be celebrated and delighted in, opportunities for growth and change. I think that if we delight in ourselves, Cameron, honestly, I think it's the rehearsal for delighting in the other.
Yes. It's interesting that fire has played a key role, in your writing, but more so in your experience, which is, I suppose, why it shows up in your writing. I'm wondering if you were to think about what the congregation learned in the burning of the sacred space that, most people think, oh my gosh, how could we possibly be church without the building? And I'm remembering the story in your book about you packed up the things, you were moving across the country and you packed up the things that you wanted to carry with you and the truck burned. And, so yeah. So this has been an interesting theme for you of, there are things we hold on to until we let them go, or with our will or without or against our will. But there's a gift in that I'm wondering how the congregation is understanding that and how you've understood that in this journey.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I like the idea of, connecting that to the future spirituality, which I neglected to say. We'll either love ourselves better to be connected to our neighbor, or I think that we are going to have a poorer experience of spiritual connection in the future. Fire. Yeah, those texts in the Bible about fire are not always fun. I mean, Israel is led by fire across the wilderness, but refiner's fire and the dross is coming out and the purifying and oh my goodness, who can stand it? Fire does purify. Fire does clarify what's important. In those days as a young woman, when I lost all my stuff, except for my piano, which was a smoky mess, I found myself feeling lighter and I don't need to buy all this stuff again. I like shoes, but do I need it? How many do I need? What really matters happened for me then. And in this moment, as an older adult, fully 30 years older than that time, I am left in the same space thinking about what's really important. you know, we grew in this time of COVID and in this time of fire by over 600 people. But that doesn't mean we don't need a space. Like, we learned that we need a different kind of space. We can do lots of stuff like this in Zoom and connecting in digital platforms. Love it. But also the times we gather outside of our sanctuary, Cameron, you know, in the cold December day, dancing and singing, like the place mattered outside. For homecoming, sitting outside in the street mattered. Touch matters. Looking at people in the eye matters. The sound of music in a space matters. So it's a both and experience, a sifting, a sorting. And I think my congregation really is doing well on that journey. We're all wired differently. Our builders need a building more than our young people. But we've learned a lot about what we can do. Like toddlers and teenagers, you know,
Yep.
what we can do, what we are made of, how we're resilient,
Yes.
how we can organize still for justice in the spaces. It's been such an important lesson.
Good.
I know I'm wiggling and swiggling. I'm in my neighbor's apartment, y'all, and it is freezing in here. So I am like moving it to keep it alive.
Yeah, it's a busy day for you. So thank you for the conversation. I want to revisit this idea of, so because what's been consistent in a lot of the conversations that I've been having when I'm asking about the future of spirituality, it's kind of like we're at this pivot point or this tipping point of, as a humanity, and I mean, even today, the United Nations released a report that says, okay, if we're going to actually impact climate change, it's now or never. You know, we're like we need to move now or it's over. Yeah. So there's this intuition of either we're going to, these are my words, not yours, but kind of evolve in our acceptance of one another and our care for one another and our sense of being one, you know, interdependent, or we're going to devolve into this kind of tribalism and protectionism that will be very dangerous ultimately for all living creatures on this planet. Do I have that right? Is that your sense that we're at this kind of pivot point?
Yes, absolutely. About climate, yes, and also just about human survival, which of course, with Mother Earth goes to kaput, you know, we don't have a case to make, but there is I do think we're having a couple of different kinds of emergencies. You know, one is around race and ethnicity, and with that, class and power. I mean, it's really shocking to think about Russia pummeling a sovereign nation. Honestly, I actually cannot wrap my mind around it, and also can't really wrap my mind around what we as a global community are supposed to do about it.
That's the hard part. Yeah. And can we talk about that for just a second? Because you've been so wonderful about helping people know the next best step of the difference that you can make. Right. So you help to mobilize a lot of us to go make this world a better place. And these problems feel so huge.
Yeah.
You know, like climate change, like this war that we're seeing that has literal nuclear potential. You know, what can we do? What do you advise your people to do?
You know, something, right? Something.
Yeah, anything, right?
Seriously.
You know, something.
I mean, I was, you know, we're packing up to move right now, and I was noticing that the moving company that we picked is mostly using recyclable bins, which means that they had to sterilize them and whatever other things, and also means we're putting our stuff in plastic bags inside them, whatever. But they are using this whole other kind of system instead of all that cardboard. And I was really pleased. That's part of why we picked them, is this kind of ecological muscle that they're growing. So to be straight, it's still cool to think about how you're going to get your soap and shampoo. It's still awesome to think about buying the plastic bottles that are already made from plastic bottles, right? To buy the jackets made by plastic bottles, y'all. Who are the sustainable partners. And I'm always saying, because it matters, you shop there and it costs a little more, but you are making an ecology work that makes the world work. So how we spend our money, what we listen to, what we consume, those are choices each of us can make every day to do everyday justice, is the chapter in the book. And this place of, woe is me with the electeds and stuff, do we want to, I mean, not to be dramatic, Cameron, but do we want to be the people who are read about in 20 years and like Ukraine got flattened and we just were like, okay, let's not buy gas. I mean, I don't know, what do we want to say? So I think we have to use the power of our voices, of our social media to ask of our electeds what we think they should do. And I think that goes all the way up to the president. I don't know who's advising President Biden. That's another talk for another time. But I think we have to utilize the channels that we have. And you can donate to Ukraine, right? Anywhere, lots of spaces. In our neighborhood, the Selka, the Ukrainian restaurant, is gathering things and sending. Some of our family are, our middle family are Ukrainian, and we're supporting them as they support the folks. You can adopt a family. Website, adopt a family. Do it. You do you in the world, and don't wait for your pastor, imam, rabbi, yoga instructor to tell you what to do. Do it in your neighborhood, locally, and you'll make a difference there.
Yeah. So do all the good you can in all the ways you can.
Yes.
What you have. I love that. At the end of your book, can I read to you your own book?
Sure.
You say, to learn to walk with whatever higher power speaks to us, we absolutely must walk with one another into tomorrow with full sight. I invite you to believe assiduously that in how lovable we each are, and in the love between us and among us, because actually believing is seeing. Believing is seeing our connection. We are one. This is the kind of fierce love to which we are called. This kind of love is not a feeling or sentimental. It's radical, transformative action that takes risks to see the common good. It sees our neighbor better than they see themselves. It makes sacrifices. It creates a way out of no way. It's the Black folk religion I grew up with for all the people. It's the fiercest love of all. I love that paragraph, and it sounds like within every cell of your body that's the sense of we're all in this together. That it's our overcoming of our fear and our resistance to one another, that we find our way to one another, and that's literally for the salvation of the world.
That's right, Cameron. And I just remember one time years back, I had a conversation with Brian McLaren, and the word religion literally meaning to bind ourselves to one another, from the Latin. And what should religion do? Talking about the future of spirituality, what job does spirituality have? What job does spiritual practice have, or religion have, if it isn't to connect us to each other and to the source? And if it is not doing that, I actually think it needs to die, period. Like,
yes.
You and I are in the season of on the way to the cross and the resurrection. Like, what needs to die? Can you imagine? There was a replaying of some of a 1997 ads about Disneyland or World, one of the Disneys, where there was a big boycott by the church because the Disney people were going to give health care to their gay employees. Gonna boycott the parks because they're gonna give health care to their gay employees. And talk of that is grooming children to be gay. That is the biggest pile of warm, hot mess I've ever heard, except for the piles of hotness now, where gay should not come out of the mouth of folks in Florida.
Right.
The parent of trans children ought to be incarcerated for taking care of the children. And that's just on the sexuality and gender tip. Like the woman stuff is still crazy. Like you still aren't supposed to talk. I still get hate mail. I'll bet you do too.
Yes, I do.
We're talking in the pulpit. Like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah. I get more hate mail for being female than for being gay, for being anything else. It's the, how dare you, woman, use your voice this way, your authority.
It's insane. And so y'all who are listening, if you are in a church that you are not having a hermeneutic of suspicion about, suspicion lens, when they are teaching you hate in the name of Jesus, like I want to say, get out, because that is just insanity.
Yeah.
So yeah, we are at do, die, ride or die, make or break. What kind of people do we want to be? What kind of people do we want to be? What kind of humankind do we want to be? And if we want to survive, we have got to stop creating barriers and boundaries and rules and polity and foolishness that legislate in the name of God hatred for one another. Yes.
Yeah. Brian, who's a mutual friend of ours, I remember him talking one time, and I've adopted this saying is one I use frequently too, that congregations at their best should be schools of love. And that if you're not becoming more loving by being connected to the community, then that community is not being a faith community. It's not being church, it's not being synagogue, it's not being temple. It's not living out its vocational call. And so get out of there. That's what I'm hearing you say. Jackie, if there was one word, when you think about the future of spirituality, and I think I'm sending you a softball question here, as opposed to other people who've really thought about it. You've thought about it, I think. So we'll see if my guess is right. But if you could think of one word that holds your hope for the future of spirituality, that could serve as a guidepost for the rest of us, what's one word, or even a phrase? But
I think the phrase is, what would love have me do? And if y'all want to quote some Tina Turner, what's love got to do with it?
Yeah.
If we can't answer that question, that this is about love, I think we might want to reconsider it.
Yes.
And that means we have to define love, right? Cameron, love is not possession. Love is not a power over. Love is the non-possessive delight, my friend Jim Loder said, in the unique particularity of the other. What can we get there about love as a way to guide our behavior?
Yeah.
I think if we can win at this thing called life.
Well said. Hey, thank you for this.
Thank you for this. I'm glad to see you.
Same.